for friends.
I thought this music was so epic.
We all like talking about gaming.
The only thing that I disliked about the old game.
There are so many different conversations started by gaming.
Oh, I forgot I have you.
This could be anything.
Okay, walk in that green goo. Oh, okay. That's a no.
Anything Gaming Podcast. Hello, welcome to Anything Gaming episode 23. I was the wrong episode, I know. Today we're going to be talking about retro games, like specifically PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, around that era. They seem to be making a huge comeback, and I will introduce Woody and then see how we go.
Oh, hey, how's it going? One thing I do want to mention, I forgot to mention, like, before we start recording, there is a pretty bad storm going on all around me right now. Like, very windy, lots of rain. It's supposed to turn into snow in the middle of the night. So, there is kind of like a power outage warning going on right now. So, if this feed just dies, don't worry. It's probably just like an accident somewhere, and I apologize.
Yeah, well, that's okay. We'll see how.
Other than that, though, I'm doing great. It's been awesome. I've actually been having a lot of fun. Have I mentioned Dino Trauma yet?
Yeah. You've talked about that last 2 weeks. You love it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Like, very fun game. I am enjoying that one. It's just so far. I mean, even the stuff that's not that great is still like cool and funny and like enjoyable in the game. And that's a hard thing to do. So I've been enjoying that. And everything else has been great. How about yourself?
Dead Space. Remember, I got that. I started playing through that. I'm about halfway through. Oh, probably not that far through. Probably not that far through. It's really good. There's a couple of things I don't hate about it, but I think, why did they do that? For example, when you kill a guy and he's just laying on the ground and you bump him and then he moves, it just cheapens it, but I guess they did that because when it goes to dead space mode, then they can float and stuff like that. So they had to keep their rigid body in the character.
There were little physics there, yeah.
Yeah. The little things. It reminds me of... I don't see it as a horror game so much. There's a few little jump scares, but for me, it's not a huge horror game. I see it more like a darker version of Time Crisis or something like that, or Crisis. No, Crisis. Cryotech Crisis 3.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
How you've got the weird suit and you can do different things with the suit.
Yeah. All right.
That was very typical of a 2000s type of game. So having those stasis.
It originally was a 2000s type of game.
Yeah, I think that's where this topic came from because I was playing through it and going, this is really...
That's a good lead into what we want to talk about because Dead Space was birthed from the 7th generation. Now, when you said retro and you were talking pretty much PS3 360, do you include the Wii into that as well? Because that's the same in the ssame timeline, really.
Yeah, and I suppose would that be the Game Boy Advance, or we get talking Game Boy?
I think the Game Boy Advance was starting to like. It was clearly on the down low. It was paving way for the eventual DS.
So yeah, maybe around that era as well, like end of Game Boy Advance when they were at the peak of Game Boy Advance, start of Game Boy DS. So yeah, around that era.
No, yeah, right. And that really was an awesome time. It was a long time. It's one of the longest serving generations, really, when you think about it. Yeah, so because of that, it had a lot of acres to burn, and we got a lot of good games in that gen. A lot of good ones. So many that there's ones I haven't played through yet. Just so many.
Well, how about we start with why do you think those games are becoming so popular at the moment? Like they seem to be way more popular than, I don't know, they were almost when they were released at the time. Some games that were released back then are seeing almost more popularity today. Have you got any theories?
I think what it has to do with performance. I mean, go all the way back, and you're trying to make something that looks like a person. It's going to be blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And with every generation, the blocks get more a little bit refined. Now it's a sprite, and it looks pixel. Now it's a 3D, and there's more polygons. To me, the seventh generation is when you could design a person in a game, and yeah, there's a bit of uncanny valley, but it looks like a person. So therefore, whatever you're trying to create will look like what you're trying to create. It'll look like it perfectly, down to garbage on the floor, stains on the wall, things like that, things they take for granted. Still a video game, still clearly a video game, but a good analogy I use is, okay, so take Dead Space 3, for example. There's a part where you go into a movie. It's supposed to be a projector room, so there's seats, the theaters, and it looks great, like the shadowing and all that. And I mirrored that to the movie theater in Duke Nukem, which, was a movie theater. There was a screen, there's seats, but if you look, the seats are literally blocks. Just aren't attached to the floor. But it still implies that. It was always trying to get to that part where everything would look A-okay. And I think that 7th gen is when we got there. And it's been refined since with, 8th gen and 9th gen looking better and better. But I think we finally got all the ingredients that you would need in 7th gen.
Yeah, I agree with you. One thing that I was thinking as well is a lot of the games in that generation were almost at the peak of their powers. It was when we got the best at storytelling in the games. One-player games were really good. I mean, we were just starting online gaming at that time. Like, online gaming wasn't really a thing before that. I mean, it was, but it kind of, that's when it started to kick on. And I wonder if we're going back because we're making all these online games now and people are like, hey, I just wanted a nice story game. Can we just go back and revisit some of those really cool story games?
Well, I mean, speaking of online, one thing I like to look is the actual online. Take a look at the 360 when it first came out. Now, by the time it came out, like day one, Xbox Live was a thing.
Yeah.
It had been rolling on the OG Xbox for a little while. And when it came out, I mean, you could already do incredible things. I don't know if Xbox Live Arcade was out yet, but it was coming out, little bits and pieces like that. By the time the 360 was retiring and the Xbox One was coming to play, you could already download whole games. Netflix, YouTube, Hulu was on there. It had just become this huge block of entertainment, that would define the later generations. So that benefits, again, to the 7th gen being so long. It had so much time to really, grow and hatch.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, well, if you have a game from that generation that you loved, write in the comments and we'll get to it next time, or if you're watching live, we can do it now. But I think that we kind of peaked at storytelling in that generation, and then we started recycling stuff and making remasters a lot. I mean that's basically like Grand Theft Auto 5 got released and it's still a very strong game today. Like, you know what I mean?
No, true. I mean, you can't deny the effect that remakes, remasters, reboots are the norm today. But to be fair, even back then, that kind of stuff was going on. I remember one of the first PS3 games that I got, and because this always confused me, God of War 2 came out fairly late into the PS2's reign. I think PS3 may have already been out by the time God of War 2 came out. So it was almost inevitable that was going to come on. But eventually you got the remastered, looks better now for its PS3 graphics version of God of Wars 1 and 2.
I want to get on to some hidden gems from back then that people hadn't thought about, or probably hadn't really, they got lost because there was a lot of games that come out in that time that basically a lot of them got lost and forgotten about. If they didn't make a sequel to it, you probably didn't hear of that game now. There's a lot of those type of games. For me, so I remember the PlayStation 3 coming out, and it had 3 or 4 games on launch. One of them being Drake Uncharted. Obviously went on to be a huge franchise. That was where the first one started off. Another one was Heavenly Sword. Now, that game to me is such a hidden gem, basically because, like, if I talk Heavenly Sword, everyone's like, what are you talking about? It was such a great game, and it was made by the people that made God of War. It was kind of like their hiatus from God of War. They decided to try something different, and they didn't want to make a God of War game. So you got the God of War vibe, but whole different characters. And I think it even got a weird God of War movie over in Japan. So, Heavenly Sword movie in Japan, which is like super weird, but it never kicked on to make a sequel or anything else. And I'm just hanging out for the sequel to come. Any other games like that you can recall?
Well, I know my first PS3 game launch game was Resistance: Fall of Man.
Yeah.
Then the next gen first person shooter. Like, oh my god, like I need to play this. Holds up fairly well even to this day. I played it recently, and just like the concept of, okay, so it's slightly more advanced World War II weapons and mentality against strange creatures. It was so alternate reality and so science fiction that at the time, new franchise. There was Resistance 2 and then Resistance 3, and I think there was a couple PSP games or Vita games that may have been Resistance based. Yeah, but that was one of my favorite games when that came out. I played that a lot.
I never played that. I always looked at it and go, oh, I'm not real. At the time, I was never that into first person shooters when that came out.
Yeah.
So it was World at War that came out on PlayStation 3 that really got me into them.
If I'm not mixing up the timeline, I would say like the last first person shooter that really like I played a lot of that came out before that, because it was like kind of a bit of a drought. Even Half-Life 2, I didn't play till later. You know what I mean? So one of the big ones I played was the Red Faction games.
I was going to talk about them. Yeah.
Going into hidden gems, I think a lot of people forget about Red Faction Guerrilla. On the for me, it's more of a 360 game, although I did play it for PS3.
Such a good game.
It's a wonderful game, and at the time, it's not that I hated it. I just loved the Red Faction of old, the first-person Red Faction, and the fact that you could just destroy anything. It was cool. It was cumbersome to try to do because, like, in practice, it's like, wow, you can destroy the bridge underneath the guys, and then the guys fall. It's just a lot easier to shoot them. It was
just such a good game. And I liked about that series was that all the different Red Factions added a different mechanic to them. It's like we had really good success with this game. How about we just make a completely different game for number 3? And you're like, as a fan coming into it, you're just like, what have they done here? Why is this even a game still? Like it was so confusing as a game.
Yeah. But it was a nice reinvention. It's actually probably one of the better reinventions, which is another hallmark of the 7th gen. You saw some games like becoming something completely different.
Yeah.
And just knocking it out of the park, and that's one of them.
Crises did come out in those games in that genre too. Another kind of fall back to where we started with this whole episode. I loved the Crises series. They were kind of, I think by number 3, it looked amazing, but it was kind of such a boring story.
Yeah, honestly, like I only ever played Crisis 1. It was fine, but I was very late to the game. Had I played it more when it came out, I think I would have been like, oh my gosh, this is the best. But like, I only played it about like for the first time 4 years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so
I was
cool.
very late to the game for that one.
Especially if you like Dead Space so much, I feel like it's got such a similar vibe, similar kind of story.
Think what
Almost like a
ruined it
RoboCop type of thing. That's why I'm really surprised that you didn't jump all
because
over it.
at the time I wasn't a PC gamer. And like I only had the consoles, and Crisis was the benchmark at that time.
That was the game
Like I
that
remember
everyone
everyone
used
thought
to.
like
I can run Crisis on 400 FPS, and that was the game
right,
that everyone went,
that was
yeah.
the first time like people were just like, I mean, further back, I remember when people were talking about Quake 2 being like that, but Crisis was the standard.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the PC version will usually look better than the console version. It's gotten a little more narrow today, but it's still there. And back then, it was wider. And I just didn't want to. If it was that good, I didn't want to experience the most subpar version of it. You know what I mean? Now that I've gone back and now I have a PC and I played like as good as Crisis can possibly look, I guess, without like really getting into mods and stuff. I don't think I would have missed anything. I probably should have played it when it came out.
Played it. Yeah, because it did feel like a PC game.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like
it looks
you played
great.
on
I
if you
mean,
told your friend you were playing it on console, they'd go, well, "Why don't you buy a PC?" They were really,
it looks fine. It looks perfectly fine. But I mean, I don't think I would have missed anything just playing on console at the time, to tell you the truth.
yeah, 100%. I played it both of them or all of them on console. I really enjoyed them. I thought they were really good. Had kind of that weird suit so you could like go invisible. You had like the first kind of game that it was based on like good looks, but it just had a nice story that made you I've lost my words today. It had like suit that had like all these different powers and stuff. I think it wasn't the first game to do that, but it really implemented it really well.
One thing I appreciate about Crisis, though, to me, Crisis is the real Far Cry 2. Because if you play Far Cry 1 and then you go to Far Cry 2, it really does feel like a completely different game. Yeah. And Far Cry 2 to 3 is a lot closer than Far Cry's 1 and 2. 1, I wouldn't call 1 open world at all, but it was like, a fairly open area.
Yeah.
And you just had to work your way to the goal, in whatever way you wanted to do it, like that. So I always felt that Crisis carried on that tradition a lot more than the subsequent Far Cry games. I mean, now it's completely different with 6.
Yeah, no, that's true. One game that I loved a lot back then is the Saboteur. Did you ever play that game?
I just downloaded it on a Steam sale about a week ago.
Okay, so we
I'm
can
looking at the icon right now.
Oh, we can. Oh, did you? Well, because that was a really interesting game also because it came with. Yes, that's it there. It came with, I think it depended if you got the Xbox or PlayStation version, similar to BMX Triple X, depending on how much nudity you got in the burlesque club.
I think they did ask about nudity when I started the game.
Yeah, so you must have got
they asked if I would be offended by nudity. I'm like, hell no. And
so you must have got the good. You must have got the good version of it then, and yeah, such a cool game. Kind of in that Prohibition era.
That's good. I mean, it was cheap. It was only $5, and I had money, and I got the 360 version, but I still never actually went through it.
No, I was trying to look at who made it. I was trying to see what company made it because it was. I'm just Googling it now while we speak, but
I want to say it's Pandemic. I think it's the same company that actually made the Mercenary series. I could be wrong. Actually, why don't you nail me on that if you want to?
It was published by EA, which is always a bad start. Well, not back then. Back then, EA was okay.
Yeah, they were just.
They were starting to.
Anakin was.
They were starting to get the evil empire. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, let me just see. Developers. Yeah, it is a Pandemic studio. Oh. Yeah. I don't know what they did.
Mercenaries. They did the Mercenary series.
Battlezone 2. Okay. Mercenaries, yeah. Destroy All Humans. Okay. Yeah, but it was kind of a little bit different to, I think, a lot of their other type of games. It was almost like in that Prohibition era, but it was a little bit of a GTA kind of vibe where you've got like an open world and you go around doing missions and you're sneaking around and you got car races that you can do. And I don't know, it's just a really cool kind of game. Never got a sequel, never got anything else to it. Another one of our disappointing losses to the...
Another... and it's weird calling this a hidden gem because at the time this was a AAA marketed game that was coming out, but it was a BioWare game, Jade Empire.
Oh, okay.
It was pretty much what they did in between Star Wars and Mass Effect. Phenomenal action RPG. I loved it, and it kind of hinted towards a bigger, wide open world like the other games, and there never was.
I never even played that. I just googled it now, and yeah, okay. I didn't even remember.
Yeah, I know. It's solid. It's solid.
Okay, that is.
It's Knights of the Republic, but with like martial arts, which is pretty cool.
That was just popular back then. They were always kind of.
I mean, I bought it. I don't know how well it necessarily did in sales. I was all over because I love Knights of the Republic.
So not this one here is not so much a hidden gem, but completely fell off the radar is the Skylanders series.
Yes.
Remember how big that was?
Yeah. I actually got to give a shout out to my friend Brian and his kids. They went like all in Skylanders. They have them all.
Oh,
like I remember going.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I played Skylanders with them. I can't even count how many they got, and they got all the. It's in the same generation, but the Lego Dimensions too. All those toy to life games.
But Skylanders was, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was a spin-off of Spyro.
Conceptually, yes.
Spyro was in Skylanders, yeah?
He was, yep. I mean, there wasn't Crash Bandicoot. And weren't Bowser and Donkey Kong in there somewhere, too, at one point?
Maybe.
Yeah. They got cool ones, too. They're, like, huge.
Yeah, but this is the first one that had, like, that little thing you bought this pad and you put your little character on it, and that's how you chose how to play the character. Instead of just navigating a menu like normal games, it was the first game to make you go and buy these figurines, and that was the only way you could play the character. Such a weird idea. I mean, a few other games followed that afterwards, but it was probably the leader of that era of buying the figurines. It's like the pop head things that they have now that they did something. They helped your game.
No, that was the toy to life. The three that come to my head is the Skylander series, Lego Dimensions, and what's it there? Disney Infinity.
Disney Infinity, yeah, that's the other. Yeah,
that was a big one, and they did have their moment in the sun, but it didn't last long. In fact, the last video game I ever bought at the retailer called Toys R Us, which holds a special place in many millennial heart and Gen X's too. The last thing I bought from them before they closed down was a starter kit for Disney Infinity 3.0 for the PlayStation 3. It's in a cool box. I never opened, never touched. A nice huge box. It's got Anakin on there. It's got, a bunch of other Disney characters. It's a nice starting set. $3.
And now you wonder why Toys R Us have closed. It's because of the people like you.
This was like they were closing in 4 days. Hey, no, seriously though, RIP. Lots. I got some, like, Super Nintendo stuff from them all the way up to PlayStation 3 stuff, I guess. Yes. Because once the PlayStation 4, the 8-gen came in, that's really when Toys R Us started their decline.
Yeah, because everyone started getting digital.
Yeah, but
I'm surprised GameStop's still going. Like, they only survived because of that bit, the whole shares kind of buyout type of thing, stock trading.
Things going up the wayside, just like those toy to life games. went to the wayside. And speaking of 7th gen games that were particularly big during the 7th generation, the one series, I'll just group the whole thing: Guitar Hero and Rock Band.
Yes, yeah.
That genre that had that life. It started in the PlayStation 2 era, with Guitar Hero. Like, that's when it really started to become big, and right when it, just about to hit that peak, around the time Guitar Hero 3 and Rock Band 1 came out, that's when the 360 versions came out, and then it just went from there. Especially when you could start downloading songs.
I was surprised it made it that long. Like, I was such a negative Nelly when that kind of came out. I was sitting there going, I don't think this is going to survive. And then it just went bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it finally died. But I was surprised it actually went along that far. It was so kind of such a party game.
It was. I just had so much fun. I can't describe how much it just motivated me to when I first got Rock Band. Guitar Hero was fine, Guitar Hero was cute, and it was like a multiplayer game. But once I got my hand on the drums, that was that. I remember binging that game for at least 2 hours a day, straight for a year.
I remember not playing much of it at all, but playing because I think in that era we had a lot of. So, okay, let me just take you backwards in a little bit of a journey before we go forwards. In that era, we were pretty much in Nintendo, the generation before that, we defined what the controllers were. And we were kind of like, here's what you get for a controller now. And everyone's like, okay, cool. Now we know how controllers are meant to be. And then we went to that era with the PlayStation 3 and they started bringing out Guitar Hero, which is a new type of controller. They also brought out the quiz games where you have a button, like a multiple choice quiz game kind of thing. Also the singing ones, the karaoke ones, that kind of thing. And we just started redefining the controllers, and then people got the shits with it, and then we went back to normal controllers that we had the generation before. But the quiz games for me, that was so much fun from an adult point of view. I remember sitting around drinking, having a good time with friends, and just playing quiz games for all hours of the night. It was like Trivial Pursuit, but no one had to pack up afterwards.
No, yeah, I remember everyone had that pile of controllers that were just the button, for when you actually have people over and you play Buzz.
Yeah, Buzz.
What was it?
Buzz. It was Buzz.
Was it called Buzz? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Oh. Sorry, I almost forgot. That was the generation that they brought out that Tony Hawk skateboard too. Was that the?
Oh yeah, the actual skateboard.
Yes, so you're right. Yeah. That was the beginning of the end of those weird controllers.
Speaking of controllers, one huge thing happened to controllers in the 7th gen.
What's that?
They went wireless.
Oh, I forgot it. I did.
Yeah, that's when they went wireless. Yeah, there were wireless controllers going all the way back to Atari, but they sucked. You know what I mean? They were weird infrared controllers. The first real decent wireless controller I ever used was a Wavebird for the GameCube, but that wasn't the standard. That's not what's packed in. Yeah. It was still, but it was still cool. So once they got to the generation after that, it's okay, now this is a wireless controller. And I tell you one thing. The front of my TV got a lot cleaner. I'll say that. All those wires just sticking out everywhere.
I do remember actually when they had the PlayStation 2 and they would spruik about how long the controller cable was. It would be, and 5 meters of cable for your controller, or whatever it is in feet or inches, it just, and a really long cable basically. And you're like, oh, okay. But also, that's when the motion controllers came in as well. I think the Wii U and the PlayStation, that's what I thought you were going to talk about. When motion controllers, PlayStation 3 had the motion controls too.
I mean, see, that's the thing. PlayStation 3, and to an extent, the 360 did mess around with motion controls. like the Kinect and the move and the motion with that. But that all seemed to come like a little later. Whereas the Wii was motion control heavy, like right out the gate. It was the focus,
No, the PlayStation 6 Senses was straight out of the gate, but no one was talking about it because they were all like Nintendo.
No one was talking
focused.
about it for the same reason no one talks about the pad, because no one uses it. Like what a game ever used. The best thing that the 6S has ever done is when I'm typing in stuff and I can just use the motion to go through the digital keypad. That's the most use I've ever really gotten out of it.
That was the main reason that I loved Heavenly Sword, was because it used the Sixth Sense so well. You used to hit a button and you could fly arrows as they were going through the sky, and it was so much fun. But I don't think, what killed the Sixth Senses? Because Xbox never put it into their controller. Lazy Xbox ruined it because back then that was Nintendo made games for Nintendo, and then PlayStation and Xbox developers would make games that went for both of them, and so you'd have to port them to both. So you couldn't add PlayStation features, or you'd have to remove them when you went to port it to Xbox. So it was easy just to make it to suit the Xbox controller. So because of Xbox laziness, we all got no Six Senses controllers implemented into any games.
And to jump ahead in the timeline, I guess it's time to see if that's going to happen to haptic feedback.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing that PlayStation's got, but Xbox does not.
I don't even think the Xbox controller has Six Senses in it anyway.
Oh, no. It's just the controller.
Yeah.
It's just... Yeah. That's why I hate nowadays. I know we're supposed to be talking about older games. We're talking about newer games. When did controllers start needing to get updated? Has this happened to you?
How long do they live?
Yeah, like when you turn on your system, usually it's when you get a new controller, so there's an update and says, "Oh, now your controller needs to update." What's it updating?
I don't know. I think it's just maybe, I don't know. Drivers. It's probably got drivers in there.
Just maybe like a screen, like a display on the controller. When the gamepad for the Wii U needs to update, I understand that.
But
I don't know.
I would say because it's to do with probably your haptics. It's probably to do with the touchpad. They've got a touchpad. Forget there's a touchpad in the PlayStation controller because they don't actually use that.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, well, the only game that I can think of off the top of my head where I really used that was Infamous Second Son. I forget exactly why. It had something to do with like marking something, but you'd have to like down, left, up. Just weird stuff like that, and it was very loose. You could pretty much just scribble and you'd get it in, right?
Yeah, that was terrible. I always think to myself, why? I thought that would have been out of it. The touchpad would have been out of the PlayStation control by now, but it's still there. Or Xbox would have implemented one, and they haven't. So no developers add touchpads. There was an Assassin's Creed game they had, and instead of using the D-pad to navigate the menu, they made you use the touchpad to navigate the menu, and it was the most painful thing of all time.
At this point, I just think of a touchpad as being a very, very complicated select button.
Basically, yeah.
That's all it is. It's a very complicated select button that does more than just select.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm going to throw us back to our games our excellent games.
The future.
Yeah, stuff the future. Contrast. Did you ever play Contrast?
Contrast.
Yeah.
No, I did not.
Okay, Contrast has this really, really cool mechanic in it. It's basically a puzzle game, but it was the first game that you'd play as a character, and then you would be able to jump out of your body and become your shadow, and then use your shadow to go and navigate some puzzles, and then you could jump back into your body or like things like that. So you'd use the shadows to get around the level as well as the body. Just a really cool game. I think that's been done a few times now in some other games, but Contrast was the first one to do it.
If we're talking about like more like maybe games that were somewhat popular but a little under the radar, a great 7th gen game. They have remastered it a couple times since then. Shadow Complex.
Who's that?
Did you ever play that one?
No.
It's actually a very refreshing Metroidvania.
Oh.
And I just remember that I hadn't played a lot of new Metroidvanias before that. There were the Game Boy Advance Castlevania games that come out, but nothing to this level. It was very polished, very modern. You use actual guns, not laser guns or swords or anything like that. It was one of those games that blew me away with its ingenuousness, whatever you would call it. It was a smart game, much smarter than me. I do try to play it from time to time.
No, I
haven't completed the remaster version yet, but I played the original quite a bit.
I have definitely not one that I've done. The one I'm going to throw at you now, and I'm assuming you've played this game, and I'm surprised this game hasn't been remastered because to me it's probably almost the greatest game in that thing. Do you want to hazard a guess for this, or
are we talking Metroidvania game?
No.
What's the genre? Give me the genre.
It's kind of like God of War, but it's not God of War.
Dante's Inferno?
Yeah. How good that game was so good.
And man.
And
yeah,
it needed to be remastered. It was such one of the greatest games from that era.
It was like the spotlight's on God of War, and I love God of War, but Dante's Inferno had it down pat as well. I just think because it's one of those games that today I could see people complaining about. Back then, people complained about it. Actually, there was it was a publicity stunt gone wrong. If someone wants to correct me on this, go for it. But I believe it may have not been at an E3, but at a convention. There were picketers that were protesting the game because they were saying it was satanic, it was evil.
Yes, it was
you go to biblical hell. You don't go to Hades. You don't go to the underworld. You go to where, the unbaptized and the adulterers and the people that, covets their neighbors' oxen, or where they all go. You go there. So it was a protest about that, and it turns out that the protest wasn't real and that they were paid to do it.
They didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that was a fake protest.
It was a fake protest, yeah. So it was a little classless.
You got to do it.
EA made that game, right? That's an EA game?
Yeah. That wasn't EA. EA loved doing some kind of funky stuff back then.
Clever. I'll give them that much, but, sometimes people don't do certain things for a reason. And I think that's just it. I wasn't offended, but people would have been.
Yeah, but I don't even know if it's on Steam or anything anymore, but it's just a game that's been lost to time.
It is backwards compatible with the Series X. I know that.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, Xbox is really good at backwards compatibility, to be fair. But yeah, it was just next level cool. Oh, obviously Limbo, that was a really cool game that came out back then. One of the first arcade games. We talk about that all the time. And I don't think it's been lost to the world so much, but yeah, it was.
Did we ever actually talk about Super Meat Boy in depth?
No, but that was I don't know why that kind of got lost to time a little bit. I mean, I do know that the sequels were shit. But I mean, that might have had something to do with it.
They don't like continuously running. Those games that are platformers, but your character's always running? I'm not a big fan of those. Because I like to sometimes, sometimes you just gotta plan and take a second, You want to play regular chess, not speed chess.
Yeah. But, I did not realize that the original Helldivers came out back
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, now that I mention it, you hear all this stuff about Helldivers 2. I haven't heard anyone talk about Helldivers 1.
It's because it's that old. It's that long ago.
Really?
It might have came out before its time.
Was there an online component? Was it big? Was it?
I don't know. I don't know. You can buy it now on Steam. I saw it on Steam for sale still. So,
All right.
no, Helldivers 1. I know that's our homework, I guess.
Yeah,
I think it was a competent game at the time, but not like a
you got
dearly
Street
loved
Fighter
game.
2. No one cares about Street Fighter 1. So hey.
Yeah,
Sometimes
no one talks about Street Fighter 1 ever. Everyone always talks about
yeah. That's probably the reason why. That should be a topic for a future episode. Sequels that just like seriously overshadow originals. You know what I mean? Like badly. You can't talk about games like any of the Zeldas because people still talk and play the original. I'm talking about games where like people forget the originals even happen half the time.
All right. Well, that's next week unless we think of something else.
Yeah. Well, now I got a couple random. Like, don't talk about them. You can use these.
Yeah, okay. Heavy Rain. Did you ever play Heavy Rain?
I played the demo and that was enough. I'm not a fan of like all respect to people that like David Cage games. Like and people tell Beyond Two Souls, Detroit Become Human.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't fun. The story was there, the acting, the graphics, it was all there. Just it wasn't fun. It didn't like draw me in. You need more than just a good story. And even though the story was good, it wasn't anything that's particularly unique. I guess Killer, Origami, Drowning in Rain. It's interesting, but
yeah,
you gotta do more. Did you like it?
I was the same as you. I played the demo and I thought, oh, this is interesting, but it was kind of one of the first games that wasn't a game, if you know what I mean. Like it was more of an interactive movie than a game, and I just wasn't into that kind of vibe, to be honest.
I mean, to each their own. I don't like sports games. Like there's plenty of like critically acclaimed, good, competent games that I just didn't grab me, and that was one of them. But I will say this though, there are ways I believe to do that kind of genre a little better. One game I did, actually, yeah, this is that generation on the Wii side, at least for me. The Back to the Future Telltale series.
Yeah.
Not really that much different. It's point and click. Pretty much, it's a Telltale game. So
the Borderlands Telltale, there's Batman Telltales, there's a few.
Walking Dead, Game of Thrones. Yeah, and I enjoyed that, but maybe just because I'm a huge Back to the Future mark. So,
did you ever play Lost Planet 3? Lost Planet 2?
I played Lost Planet 1. I played Lost Planet 1 because, that was an early 360 game. It was Capcom. And I remember hearing about this, like, hook feature. And I remember hearing someone saying, like, that's like Bionic Commando. And that's also Capcom. So, yeah, I played through that. And it was fine. But it did get a little repetitive. Kind of quick. I mean, it wasn't a bad game. But it almost everything felt very samey. And it was one of those games that you appreciate them, but you knew it was just gonna get lost. I didn't think they'd ever get 3 games out of it.
Yeah. But I did play the last one, and I thought it was a good, solid game with a boring story.
I mean, but that's good. It's good that they improved. I mean, that should always happen. One game of that era where the sequel just blew me away. I love the original Saints Row 1, and I thought it was a very fun game.
Yeah.
It had a whole lot of new ideas, a new way to look at an open world city game.
Yeah.
And it did it very well. But as well as it did it, Saints Row 2, I just took that and just shot into space. Saints Row 3 isn't bad, but to me, Saints Row 2 was that, like, watermark. Like, wow, that's the game that, it's still, if you asked me what my top 10 7th gen games would be, that'd be top 5.
Well, I don't know if it would be mine. I think at the time I just finished, Saints Row came at a bad time for me. I finished Grand Theft Auto, Vice City or something, and I wasn't ready to commit to another game like that. You know how sometimes that happens? So
No,
yeah, that.
the
So
one
that's
that kind of happened with me with Elden Ring.
oh,
I
Elden.
did something before that, and I was like, I can't do this
Yeah,
now.
okay.
I just happened.
Mag was the one. I keep on going back to Mag. It was short for something. It's the massive action gamer or something
Well,
like that.
I heard at the time it was what 256 simultaneous players.
And that was massive. That's like, I mean, I don't even think Fortnite has that many people in a game. So
Don't they cap it at 100? Isn't it like
yeah,
100?
that's what I'm saying. This game was just when the internet was coming in, and this was before we had like cross-platform. So these were all only PS3 players. The only thing was, you've got to remember back then, PS3 didn't cost you anything to play online.
Yeah, you're right. The good old days.
Yeah, that was before they made us pay for our online subscription.
Yeah,
Because
that's the reason why, we gotta come back around. That's the reason why the 7th gen. I don't know if I would call it my favorite gen, but it was a good gen for me at that time. I just entered my 20s. I was an adult now. I was working. I could vote. I could serve on jury duty now, but I still love to game.
yeah.
And that was the perfect gaming generation for me at that time.
I think it's my favorite generation as well, because like you said, you were just coming into money. You probably had a job or two, and you didn't have like a whole lot of family commitment. So
because of that, by the time Gen 7 came out, I was grown. One thing I started doing was keeping my games. When I was a kid and I wasn't working, anytime I wanted new games, because we didn't have money, I'd have to sell a lot of my old stuff to really save up to get the new stuff.
yeah,
So a lot of my original stuff, like all these Super Nintendo games, these are like I had to rebuy them all as I grew older. So I was able to finally actually sit on the games once the 7th gen came into effect.
yeah, I agree. One game from this genre they're actually remaking is the Max Payne 3, or remastering, redoing. So that's coming out, I think, next year. So because that game is nearly forgotten. It was such a good game.
Well, yeah, the whole trilogy, wonderful, loved it, still do.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a game that I'm looking through a list of games here to try and remember this game.
Well, describe it to me. Let me see if I can find it.
Okay,
in my Rolodex.
Okay. It was. I think it was Lano and Stitch, or it wasn't. It was. They weren't cartoon characters. They were real life people, and it was a game where you played the story, but it was interesting because you played through the eyes of both of the characters. So you'd shoot your way through this kind of sequence of shooting game thing, and then they would swap you over to the other character, and then you would be them for a period of time. Hang on, I'll find this game.
You lost me, man. Sorry.
I'll find it. It was such a good game. We'll end the show once I find that. Okay, so.
What system? What particular system would it have been for? Just one system? Was it multi-platform?
PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2. No, PlayStation 3, Xbox 360. Sorry.
Ratchet and Clank, Jack and Daxter.
What was the first one you said?
Ratchet and Clank.
No.
Jack and Daxter.
No, they were like, reminds me more of the Max Payne kind of violence and stuff. Similar look to Max Payne, but it was two characters you played as.
Kane and Lynch.
Kane and Lynch, that was it. Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I knew you'd come good.
Did
you ever play Kane and Lynch?
No. No. Okay, so I never actually played. Wait, no, I'm lying. I'm sorry. Whichever one starts off with you naked and the other guy naked, I did play that one. I forget why. I think my friend had it. I think that might have been part 2.
Yeah, number 2. That one's the good one.
Well, because I remember that was one of the first real big internet journalist stories I remember hearing about was Kane and Lynch 2.
Yeah.
That I forget what article it was, but someone gave it a shit review, and they did it on a website that was getting a lot of money to promote Kane and Lynch,
Yeah, right.
and it came to a head. Giant bomb ended up forming because of it, but I'm sure someone could probably fill in the details a lot. But it was a long time ago. But I remember I was keeping up with that story as it was breaking live.
It was a pretty good game, and I'm surprised it never got another sequence, and it had a nice story. It was just, I don't know, it was a good game.
No, I mean, it does have its fans, and it did get a sequel, but yeah, it stayed in the 7th gen.
Yeah, it never made
I mean, I haven't even heard anything about a remaster of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't reckon they will. It'll be one of those games that's lost, and then someone famous will YouTube it, and then we're like, oh, this really
You know what's a great game that reminds me of that, and it's the same generation, and it's for the 360. It might be for the PS3, but at the very least, I have the 360 version. I'm not being ironic. This is actually a game.
Was it Two Guns or something like that?
It's a gun game. It's a gun-based squad game, a lot like Gears of War.
Ooh.
50 Cent, Blood on the Sand.
Oh, I never played that.
I'm not being ironic. It's actually a good game. Believe it or not, it's decent. You know, it's great with the second player. It's just as fun as any Gears of War, in my mind. It's got a ridiculous story.
You have to listen to 50 Cent, though.
Well, his music is like throughout the game. I can't stream it. I would love to stream it, but I'm pretty sure he'd sue me because like it's all over the game. Like his music doesn't stop playing. They all voice each other. It's him, Tony Ayo,
maybe
the rest of the unit crew.
The music off.
Well, I mean, you could do that, but that's not realistic. If 50 Cent's shooting like people, it's kind of a culturally sensitive game as well now too.
Just turn the music off, leave the sound on, so you get the sound effects without the music.
That'd be like playing Michael Jackson's Moonwalker without the sound. You know, I mean, you could do it, but something's lost now.
I know, but we can't do it. We're not big enough to get sued yet.
No.
Yeah.
No, seriously, I gotta give the credit. This is one of those games that I didn't play till much later on. Just because I heard people talking cool stuff about it, like, oh, this game's great, this game's great, this game's great.
Yeah.
And it came up at a retro store that I went to at a decent price, and I was like, hey, I mean, I think at the time I paid $25, $30 for it, American. It was good. It was worth it. I took it home, played it. I got. Well, I don't beat the game, but I got pretty damn far. And actually, the last update for the series where they made some stuff backwards compatible, that is now backwards compatible.
Oh.
Yep. So as far as like underrated underground gems of the 360, everyone watching, if you can find a copy of Blood on the Sand, pick it up. He has jewel-encrusted AK-47s.
I'm gonna leave you with the thought of we talked about how the Gen 7 brought in the controllers, the different things. We forgot to mention one other legacy item from that era.
What?
I'm pretty sure that's when we all got exposed to exercise games.
Yes. Yeah. That came into motion. I mean, there were inklings of it here and there back in the day, but just like in everything. When you say exercise, I'm going to include those Just Dance games into there because they're just as. And plus,
Zumba Fitness.
Zumba Fitness and Wii Fit. Wii Fit board. Now that I've lost all my weight, I want to try Wii Fit. I could never do it before. I just was too heavy.
Yeah, I remember the fitness games. That was pretty exciting too. Like I just recall, I just couldn't get myself interested. Oh, I remember. Well, this is the Kinect, so it's a little bit towards the end of that generation. But going down that big rapid ride in that big inflatable boat and jumping and steering and
But hey, it got to work out, and that's always good. Get people up and moving.
I know, but it only lasted for a long. I kept on saying, "How's this going to last?" When people are just going to go, "Oh, I'm sick of these games. Like I'm sick of doing this. I get home to relax." That's the idea of video games. They were always a relaxing thing after work.
That's kind of the last gasp. I think that kind of variation, because was around before. By the time the 8th and 9th gen came in, and even to this day, I mean, all the popular games that are out today for everything, computer, mobile, blah, 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 the only one that I can think of that really has you doing something is maybe Pokemon Go. And even that, it's not like you're using a different kind of controller. Everything's still a video game. Nothing's really making you play in a different way.
I think the Wii, they got that Wii fitness ring thing where you walk along and you squash the ring in. That looks okay.
I wish that would come back, like just a game that has a weird controller, something like strange you got to do what you need to do. It just have it be popular for about 2 years. And have everyone talk about it, and then it dies a mysterious death. I want to see that come back.
Well, the Wii Sports came out, and everyone loved that for like 5 minutes again when it released.
Well, the first Wii Sports, I played a lot of the bowling. Like me and my boys would just like get together, drink, and then bowl. You know what I mean? And scream at each other while we bowl in the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you could do it, and like you turn your wrist in certain ways, and you just get strikes constantly throwing rocks down there. A couple other things were fun. The baseball was all right. The tennis, looking back. The tennis wasn't great, but
it wasn't good at all. It was the first one that everyone played.
All you had to do was just wave. It wasn't like it really mapped where your wrist was. It would with Wii Fit Plus when that came out, but at the time, just swinging, it was almost like just pressing the button to swing, and that was it.
My favorite one was with the glow sticks on the PlayStation 3. So in the PlayStation 3, to combat the Wii Fit, they actually had like a camera, and they had these little controllers that had like glow sticks on the end of it, so they could actually map where you were holding your hands or whatnot. And you had buttons on those controllers as well. My favorite one was Frisbee Golf. I loved playing Frisbee Golf.
Yeah, with the dog. Wasn't there a dog?
I don't think there was a dog. It was just it was a big golf course, and you just throw your things. And a game and a series that we kind of didn't talk about, but the Killzone series, Killzone 3, where you had these little controllers as well with the gun, and you put them in. You bought this like big plastic machine gun, and then you put one of the controllers in here and one of the controllers in the end, and then all of a sudden you had this big machine gun that you ran around the levels shooting at things. I remember that because at the time, my friend, okay, maybe friend's not the right word at the time, broke my thumb. So I couldn't.
He was an adversary.
Yeah. So at the time I couldn't play console for like, I don't know, 6 weeks or something. So that's why I played all this Killzone with this this Wii Fit control, or the glow sticks controller. That's all I had to play. Yeah. It saved my life. I was tired as hell after that though, because I had to stand up and play 8 hours straight of Killzone. I couldn't sit down on the couch and play anymore. But yeah. Anyway, that's the retro games for. Well, are they actually retro? Have we misjudged?
Yeah, because for reasons why we said, just like certain things just happening, the way that a lot of things began, like, online presence and wireless controllers. A lot of things ended, like, weird controller variations and a focus on single-player games. And so it's really like that's where it begins and ends. 7th gen. Very good gen.
Yeah.
Next time we're going to talk about, what were we going to say? The sequels there. Sequels that just make them original games just like no one remembers and garbage.
Helldivers.
Because I do want to talk more about
Helldivers
Helldivers.
2.
Now I want to look up Helldivers 1. I think I might check that out.
I'll go. You play Helldivers 1, I'll play Helldivers 2, and then we'll compare.
Yeah, we'll meet in the middle.
All right. Good to talk to you guys. Thank you for watching. Until next time, see you guys later. Bye.